Welcome to another payment integration video, and in this time we're going to be exploring money movement use cases with Cybersource gateway APIs. By money movement, I mean sending money into an account and taking money out of an account. Money going in, we call that account funding transactions. Money going out, we call that original credit transactions. Some people call them push and pull. Now, most merchants will not need this. This is more for merchants that are involved in money transfer and money movements in general, money into an account, money out of an account, and that sort of merchant. In Saudi Arabia, for example, we have STC Pay. STC Pay is a digital bank and a wallet app. You can add money into your wallet, and when you add money into that wallet, that's an account funding transaction because you didn't buy goods or services. You just added money somewhere else. And this app, STC Pay, you can use the funds in your wallet to transfer money to other people, to pay for stuff, to pay at store, to get a card issued and then pay with that card. In Singapore, they have GrabPay, which pretty much does the same thing. You can even get a GrabPay card and pay with the money in your wallet anywhere using that card. So that's another example. Fund transfer merchants are another good example of account funding and of AFTs and OCTs. When you add money to wise.com so that they can transfer it to somewhere else, that's an account funding transaction. When the other person receives it and takes that funds out of their of wise.com and take it back to their card or their account, that's an OCT. Another example of merchants that could use this are stock investment apps. Stock investment apps, when you add money into your investment account, that's an AFT. When you take out money out of your investment account and back to your card or your bank account, that's an OCT. But you might be wondering, okay, then why do we have to use account funding transactions when we add our money into an account instead of just using a regular transaction? What's the difference? It's because account funding transactions provide the card networks and the banks with information necessary to screen that transaction for anti-money laundering, for sanctions, so that the banks can run those checks on the transaction before approving it, so that they don't violate any anti-money laundering laws or authorized transactions for some blacklisted sanctioned individuals. So this is why account funding transactions must be used, and they're mandated by the card networks, both Visa and MasterCard, to be used for any use case that involves moving money into another party or another company or entity. So if you're moving money around, or if you're buying money, even if you're buying cryptocurrency, the merchant needs to implement account funding transactions because you're moving money around. But if you're buying goods and services, like you're buying a Starbucks cup, you're buying food, you're buying device, you're buying cleaning service, you're buying maintenance for your car, that's not money movements. That's just regular transactions. And in that case, you could just use regular purchase transactions for that. If you top up your Xbox wallet, for example, that's not an AFT exactly, because the money, you're adding money into your Xbox wallet so you can just buy video games, and you cannot do anything with your Xbox money except buy video games. So it's not really like a real money. It's not like when you top up an investment account. Same thing with a parking app. If you top up your parking balance, that's not really an account funding transaction because you didn't buy cash. It's not like a bank account. You can only use that to pay for parking. Now in this video, I'm going to cover the implementation for two use cases. The investment app use case, here I have a dummy app for you guys, and the fund transfer use case. Here I also have an example of a fund transfer app. It's just a fake app that looks almost like a fund transfer website. And we're going to be implementing Cybersource AFTs and OCTs on both of these use cases in this video. So let's go ahead and start with the account funding use case here in the investment app. Here I have an investment app, and when I top up my wallet, let's say for $200, that's an account funding transaction. Now I have $200 that I can use in my wallet. Then I can use that money to buy and sell stocks. I can buy 3 Apple stocks. That goes out from my wallet into my investment account balance, because now I own 3 more stocks with the worth of $172.5 each. So when you top up, that's an account funding transaction. And we need to implement the Cybersource Gateway account funding API. It's not really a new API. It's just the same as the payment API we shown in the previous videos. Check my previous videos on Cybersource if you haven't already. But with more information to explain what are we doing with this account funding. So here we indicate that this is an AFT transaction. Here I I indicate the purpose of payment, which is in my case investment, and this is the code for it. We're gonna go later over additional codes that you could use for this. Business application ID, you must supply this as part of an AFT transaction and an OCT transaction. This tells the card network what kind of use case you're doing. So double A here means account to account transfer. And here the business application ID for both OCTs and AFTs on Cybersource documentations as well. So you need to pick the one the most appropriate for your business. Your bank or your payment provider could help you with that. Here, this is just my tokenized card here. Check out my previous video on Cybersource tokenization if you haven't already to learn how to use this. And here is who's gonna receive the money in the fund transfer and who's gonna be sending it. In this case, it's the same. It's no AFT because I'm just sending money from my card account to my investment account. This is the information that the card networks and the banks use to screen this transaction against anti-money laundering sanctions and all that stuff. And this will make a difference between a regular transaction and account funding transaction, is this additional level of data. Now, when you withdraw, you just hit withdraw. Let's say I need $500 now, and I need it to be withdrawn now. It says $500 sent to your card, and I should be receiving a notification on my card that says $500 been credited to your account. Now, to implement that, you're gonna use another API, the Cybersource Payouts API. And this API largely looks the same, to be honest, with maybe less data here on the processing information, but you still got the same basic stuff. Like for example, business application ID, AA, and then the recipient and the sender information. It's just the endpoint that's the biggest difference here. So the endpoint for money out is different from the endpoint for the money in. Okay, so let's go ahead and show you guys how to implement AFT and OCT in an investment website. Let's start with an app that doesn't have this API implemented. Okay, this is a dummy app. When I hit 200, it doesn't send an API request or anything. It just does it right away. Same thing with withdrawal. Now I'm gonna be implementing these two APIs on my server side and then use them in my client side here. So let's go ahead and implement the top up. Let me zoom in for you guys. I'm gonna be doing it here, and I'm gonna call this API top up. All right, so here I have my request payload, and I have my host name, my request path, my test merchant ID, my merchant credentials. So first thing, I have a lot of hard-coded values here, so I need to change them to the actual values. For example, this. So here I need to generate a random alphanumerical string for this code. This is my own reference. This all here is going to stay hard-coded because it's the same for every transaction. This is the tokenized customer. I need to get this from the client side. Same thing with the amount. And this information, most of it, I'm going to pull from this token, because I tokenize also the customer information. Check my tokenization, Cybersource tokenization video if you haven't already. Let's go ahead and do that. Now, here's what I can get from the token and what I can get from my server. So account ID, I'll have to pull this somehow from my server. I'm just gonna hard code a string in my server here to just simulate it being pulled from my server. Just like that for demo's sake. This stays hard coded. All of this I'm gonna pull from my token. Same thing here, reference number and the passport number here, because I'm using PASIN. PASIN means passport. I'm using passport as an identification. These two I need to get from my server. Okay, now we gotta generate the random alphanumerical string. Just gonna get that from ChatGPT, like this. That's gonna be here. Okay. Now we need to use the token to pull this information from that token. Now here in video number 28, the previous video, I already implemented an API call that helped me do just that. So I'm gonna use this in my endpoint here. Now to learn how to implement the customer tokenization API, just check my previous video. I'm gonna show you how to tokenize the card information and the customer information. I'm gonna link that in the description box below. Before I implement this, let me make sure this API still works. I could just plug it here in the browser to check that. Yeah, it's working. Now, my customer information will be under default payment instrument bill to. So that's what I'm doing here, default payment instrument build to. Now here, I need to get the customer details. So let customer address, and I'm just gonna call this API, and I'm gonna pass the customer ID that I get from the client side, and that's gonna be what I'm using down there in my request. Now here it's gonna be country, not country code. As you can see here, it's country. The rest should be the same. And since it's the same sender and recipient, I could just do the same thing up there. Cool. And now we can send the request. But wait, we need to generate the request headers. Now to generate the request headers, there's this NPM package that I created to make this convenient for us. You can just plug in your parameters like this, and it's gonna spit out your headers, and then you can just plug them right away in your Axios request like this. So that's what I'm going to be using. And this goes here. Well, that should be all. Okay, now fingers crossed, and let's go ahead and try this in the simulator to see if this API request works. Okay, so let's check the inputs. We got the amount, we got the currency, we got the customer ID. What else? Amount, currency, customer. That's all. Now let's send it and see what happens. And we're getting an error. I have a request payload that is not defined. That's the problem. It's not called request payload. It's called request data. All right, let's try that again. There you go. This is working. And you know it's working because here it says authorized. So let's go ahead and deploy this to production and then just use it in our client side. In the meantime, let's work on getting the client side ready. So here, I'm gonna be implementing that API call. So this top up wallet button is mapped to this method here. This gets called when you press on that button, handle top up. Here's when I'm gonna be calling that API call. Here's where the balance gets set. Here is where I'm gonna be implementing my API request. So let's do that. My amount goes here, my currency. This is the amount that I get from the user, and the customer ID is defined globally for the demo. And this should be async since I'm using await here. And then only after the request is successful, and you know that when status is equal to authorized. We know that because that's what it says here in the API, authorized. When it's authorized, that's when you want to start topping up the customer account. Set wallet balance plus the amount. My API request is ready. Now I just want to add a nice loading indicator for when the payment's being done so that we give the user some visual feedback. So here I'm going to add a new state variable for that. I'm going to use a circular progress component for that from Material UI. And then when I hit the top up, I'm going to set that loading to true, and then send it to false when it's done or it's failing. Okay, now I'm going to replace all of this with the loading indicator when the top up is being done. Cool, everything is in place. Now let's go ahead and try to see if the top up is working. I'm gonna log the API request for you guys so you can see the result on the console. Okay, let's try it. There you go, top up is working. Here's the API request result printed in the console. I'm just gonna add an alert that says top up successful. Try it again. There you go. So this is how to implement the top up for this investment app use case. Now we need to implement this withdrawal. So it's going to be done in a very similar manner. I'm going to be using a different API though, this one. And I'm going to be implementing it here. Is where I'm going to be implementing it. So to do that, I'm going to just copy the API that I just implemented as it is and just change a few things. Here in the processing information, this is going to stay the same. This is going to stay the same. This client reference information is going to stay the same. Now here, recipient and account. Let's see if there's anything different here. then that's going to be largely the same. Since the recipient and the sender are the same, this is going to stay mostly the same. But we're going to have to change the endpoint here. This is instead going to be the payouts endpoint. Header stays the same, everything else stays the same. But let's go ahead and test the name later. Okay, let's try this. There's a problem here. I forgot a slash here. That must be it. Now let's try this again. Perfect, it's working. So I'm gonna go ahead and deploy this in production, but note that this API, to know if it's working, you gotta check status, and status is gonna be accepted instead of authorized. So keep that in mind. Deploy that to production, and in the meantime, let's work on also implementing this in the client side. This is gonna be here in handle withdraw. That's what maps to this button, withdraw. So here, I'm gonna be implementing that in the same manner. Here's where the balance gets set. And here, I need to also set loading to true. And here's when I'm gonna be implementing the API request. It's gonna be pretty much the same request, but with different endpoint and the same logic. So I'm just gonna copy all of this here. Well, not all of it. Yeah, pretty much all of it, and just paste it right here. This needs to be async. We need to change the endpoint once it's deployed. This should be accepted. This should say sent to your card. The balance should be minus the selected amount, and that should be all right. I just need my endpoint to be deployed so I can implement it here. All right, here it is. Let's use it here. Save, refresh, and let's try withdrawing. Withdraw, 300, sent. 300 sent to your card. And this is the API response. And that's how we know it's working. So that's it for the investment stock use case. And now let's move on to the next use case, which is the fund transfer use case. Now for the fund transfer use case, it's the same API requests. It's just the data is a little different. So here, I'm gonna pass the purpose of payment for that transfer. Like any app, any bank app account you've used, you probably have asked you, what is the purpose of transfer? And they had this list of weird stuff on it, like compensation, construction worker payment, like this, bus related transport, payment of cable TV, and all the other codes that you would typically see on a bank app when you do a bank transfer. So this maps to some codes, map to these codes over here. For example, unemployment disability benefits has this code. Investment that I used for the previous use case is this code. So you have to get this information from the customer using this drop-down menu over here, like I'm doing, along with the amount and maybe a note perhaps. And you need to get the customer information, which is this is the recipient in this case, and this is me, the sender. And that's gonna go in your API request here for the account funding transaction. This code is what goes in here. The rest up here is largely the same. You also have the customer token here. Here, the sender and the recipient are different because this account funding is not supposed to go to my account. It's supposed to go to someone else's account. So I have my information here, the sender, and I have the recipient information here, the sender, and I'm gonna pull the information for both out of tokens, just like I did in the previous use case. That's how I'm displaying it here. So this button right now doesn't do anything. You hit continue, just say sending, but it doesn't send it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna be implementing this API, which is very similar to the API we did before, but with different parameters. I'm gonna go ahead and implement it here. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna go to my top-up API that I implemented and just copy it and just change some stuff. Okay, this is mostly gonna be the same. The part that we wanna look closely to is here. Here I wanna fill Ronaldo's information. So I gotta get Ronaldo's token, and I'm gonna pull this information from his token and populate it here, except the things like, for example, his account ID, I need to populate this here by myself. So the recipient account ID could be like something like AE and some big number. And then the sender passport is gonna be my passport, and my reference number, which is gonna be the same. It can be the same. Anyways, the point here is that these are values that I pulled from my server. And here, currently I get just one token, which is my token. I need to get two tokens instead this time. One for the sender and one for the recipient. And here, as you can see, I'm only pulling the information for the customer. Now I need to also do this twice. Recipient, sender, and this becomes their addresses. Now I gotta update this down here in the request. And I already got the recipient account ID up here. For the sender information, I gotta do the same thing. And I already got these up here. Okay, so that should be everything. Oh, I forgot to change the name. It should be V29 sender or send. Okay, now let's test this in the emulator. Oh, I forgot the purpose of payment. So you also need to collect the purpose of payment from the client side. So here you should have any parameter, call it purpose. And instead of hard coding that should be, you should get that from the user. That's what you get from here. Now let's try this in Postman to see if my implementation is correct. And something is wrong. Let's see what's wrong. This is the issue here. Sender, recipient, but I'm sending it as sender customer ID, recipient or customer ID. So just sender and recipient, and that should fix it. Okay, I got another error. Oh yeah, here I still have customer here in the payment information. This should be because I'm paying as the sender, so it should be the sender token, which is sender. Okay, let's try again. All right, now it's working. So I can go ahead and implement this on the client side. Now here is where I'm gonna be getting that information. Let's print them out and see what we're getting. Okay, let's purpose of transfer, bus related business, and this is our JSON payload. It looks okay. Now we should implement our API request here. But first, I'm gonna also add a loading indicator just like I did before. So let's do that here. Okay, so we implemented the loading indicator. Now let's implement the API request. Now let's go ahead and see if the sending is working. Purpose, cash management transfer, note, rent, let's say. Continue. The request gets sent. This is the response. But for some reason the loading is not, it's not stopping. Oh, because this is not accepted. This should be authorized since it's an AFT. If it's an OCT, then it should be accepted. Now let's try again. Continue. There you go. Amount $100 has been sent for purpose of ISCC, which is that, whatever that code was. Hit OK, and that's how we implement AFT in the account funding transfer. Now, okay, so that was the sender user experience, and now let's switch over to the recipient perspective. This is their page. Imagine Ronaldo just received the money in his bank account, and now he wants to withdraw it to his card. This is a Pioneer, PayPal, Venmo type of user experience here. I have my card linked here, and I'm gonna pull funds out of my account and then push it to my card. Right now, this doesn't do anything. You just enter the amount, and it just says 500 has been sent to your card, and it updates the balance, but it doesn't send the API request. So I'm gonna have to implement the same API request for Payouts that I implemented in the stock app. I don't even have to create a new endpoint for it. I'm just going to be reusing the same one from the stock app page because it's going to be the same exact parameters but with different tokens passed to it. So go to the stock app. I'm going to copy this over here, and here on the handle withdraw, I'm going to be implementing that. Here when it fails, it's going to say failed to withdraw instead. Should have updated that, my bad. And we just update with the proper parameters. This should be withdraw amount. This should be the sender token, which is Ronaldo's token, which I have it here. And then I'll print out the response for you guys, and accepted means that it's been successful. And here I'm gonna be doing all of this actions over here instead of the one that I have from the stocks app. So save, and let's try it now. I'm gonna go withdraw almost everything. Withdraw, I got a decline. Okay, let's try again, maybe because the amount is too high. I'm gonna withdraw 200. There you go, that worked. So this is how to implement the recipient side of things. And this was how to implement money movement with Cybersource Payment Gateway, how to implement account funding transactions and original credit transactions, and the further use cases of an investment app and the recipient app. Now again, this is just a demo. the exact fields that you're going to have to use in the API are going to be different from a country to a country and from a use case to a use case. So make sure to check with your bank, with your acquirer, with your payment service provider on what are the exact fields that are applicable for you, what is the business application identifier, and the purpose of payment that is applicable for you. Also, make sure you check the Cybersource documentation, which I'm going to link in the description box below. Otherwise, hope this was helpful. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like, subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. And if you want to get the full source code for this project, you can check my Patreon link below in the description box. That's going to help support the channel, and also you get the source code for this project in return. That's all, and thank you for watching. See you next time.